Thanks everybody for joining us on the Choking Hazard podcast. Please remember to like and subscribe if you like the content that you're seeing and you want to see more athletes, more coaches, and more guests. Make sure you like and subscribe and also share their content.
We are sponsored by Project XGuard. We're working with Raul Chavez, and he is working with at-risk youth in the jiu-jitsu community. If you know anybody who could benefit from learning the powers of Brazilian JiuJitsu in your community, reach out to us at the Choking Hazard podcast page or Raul Chavez on Instagram at Project XGuard. And Aaron, I'm looking at my watch right now. I'm not wearing a watch, but it's 420 at Spirit Leaf Waterdown. You can get all your CBD and THC needs. You got gummies, chocolate, you got flour, you got grinders, you got everything that you need down there. Aaron, located at
64 Hamilton Street North in Waterdown, Ontario.
Beautiful. And so to get a 10% discount on your purchases in store, you need to follow the Choking Hazard podcast page. You also need to follow Spirit Leaf Waterdown on their Instagram page. So that is, one more time, Spirit Leaf Waterdown, located at, Aaron, one more time, the address, please.
64 Hamilton Street North in Waterdown, Ontario.
Where every day it is 420.
Thank you so much again for joining us on the podcast. We have a special friend of the show today, heading up with us today. We brought him back for a second episode. It's awesome. Riccardo, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, guys. You know, I saw the views of our last podcast. I think it was like 900,000 or something like that. You know, just a little bit more than Greg King's.
Might have been closer to negative 900,000.
Yeah. I'm taking a cue out of David Aguzzi's playbook here, but by exaggerating. But anyways, you know, thanks for having me back, guys. You guys are awesome. You know, killing it out there, connecting the Canadian community or what's left of it. And man, I'm happy to be on. I've seen you guys starting to dabble in some touchy subjects, so I thought maybe I'll give you guys an educated source here of information. So lay it on me. What's going on, guys?
This is why we wanted to bring you back, because there's been a lot of controversy that has happened that we have discussed, and I wanted to get your take on your end of what's been going on and what's been going on from like a FloGrappling standpoint, from a Riccardo standpoint. So first off, how have you been, and what's a lot of interesting stuff that's happened the last couple of weeks?
Well, I mean, I've been good. You know, thank goodness, you know, gyms are open again, and I've been able to go to the gym, work out, not jiu-jitsu. Our jiu-jitsu school will be reopening a local place called Global Martial Arts, which is like 2 minutes close to my house, so it's amazing. And I'll be one of the coaches there once everything's back up and running, so I'm super happy about that. You know, with Flo, just been, you know, super busy. I got my show. I just did episode 25 of my podcast with Nachieli Jesus this week. It was awesome. She was probably like the best female guest I've had, because I think some of the other females are a little more intimidated, you know, and she just spoke, and she has a great story. So that was cool. You know, she fought at Who's Number One against Gabby Garcia. Who's Number One, obviously a touchy subject. I know, you know, we've kind of chatted about this on the Instagram, and, you know, a lot's been happening. Jiu-jitsu, I think the COVID era and everyone being cooped up at home has just, I think it hit a boiling point, you know, 2 weeks ago with that event. And it's not just that, it's that, you know, the stuff happened at Who's Number One. Now you got Isaac Baez and the Brazilians declaring war on America and all this stuff because of the American Jiu-Jitsu thing. And it's just, oh man, the internet has just gone wild this week. So I'll let you guys, you know, you pick the topic, and I'll give you my take. Let's do that way.
All right. So like, I think let's start off. Let's just kind of like have your insight to the best of, like, obviously things have been coming up to that boiling point, especially with a lot of chatter with Gordon Ryan, Andre Galvao. But I mean, like, the best way that you can kind of, like, do you think this is like the tipping point? Like, we've kind of come to a close, or are we just getting started on this whole thing?
I don't know, man. I know that personally, I think, that up until that incident happened, I really think that Galvao wanted the match, but I think after that, I don't think he does anymore. I think he does inside, but I think he realized that, like, part of the deal, part of the package, part of the buy-in of taking that match is you're going to have to put up with Gordon's shit for another year and a half. And he even said it after, it's like trash talk is not, it's not good for your soul, like it really, it's draining, and to sit there and, to see what he was doing was kind of out of character. If you've ever met Andre, he's a great guy. I've spent a lot of time with him, and I just saw like a lot of what he was doing was out of character. And I think, it's just the nature of the beast. When you get involved in the trash talk, it's either you ignore it or you have to fight back. And if you fight back, you don't know how it's going to end. You know what I mean? It could explode in your face, or you could win. But he's not normally like that. Like him, the Mendez brothers, for years, they never answered any of the haters online. But I think they just got kind of sick of it, and now they're just like, whatever. So they were answering back, and the thing just kind of blew over, and the big incident happened, and since then Andre's kind of come out and apologized, and he's kind of gone radio silent since then. So I feel like that match might be done. I feel like that could be over, and now it's up to ADCC to decide who would be the next suitable opponent for Gordon Ryan. So I did a video on this on my YouTube channel.
We watched it.
Watched it. It was a very well done video. Like and subscribe.
Thank you. Hopefully we could throw the link in the description here. But anyways,
absolutely.
So basically, like if you go, and I'll kind of just recap it, but if you go by the history of ADCC, there's two more, likely, possible opponents. One would be Felipe Pena. The second would be Buchecha. But then, looking at Mo Jassim's social media lately, he's thrown out some, mystery pictures of Roger Gracie, Fabricio Verdum. So who knows? I mean, anything could happen. I chat with Mo quite a bit, so I can't really say too much about what I do know, but all I could say is the next ADCC is going to be crazy. I know I said this last time to you guys, but I don't know, man. I don't. It's like it doesn't. I almost feel like it's like whoever takes the match, whoever they end up getting, is just going to make it amazing anyway. So yeah, just we'll see what happens.
I have another potential suggestion that I don't think was brought up, and I believe this man also has a win over Gordon Ryan and Nogi, Leandro Lowe.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with Lowe is that that's all he's done, in Nogi. He is in Gi, he's phenomenal, and you're right, but he doesn't like the way ADCC works is like you've had to have been like a champion for them to like bring you back to do that match. You can't just be a guy that like won the super fight in the West Coast or won the trials or something, They want like the best of the best. And that was one of the things that the organizers told me. Personally, I agree with you. I think that seeing Gordon and Leandro fight again would be amazing. I think it'd be a totally different fight. I think that Gordon is a completely different animal. Gordon was at that event. He wasn't even there to fight. Leandro was supposed to fight Braulio, if you guys recall.
Yep.
And right before the match, Braulio pulled his hamstring. And then, they were like, shit, what do we do? And Gordon was there, and he's like, I'll fight him. So they worked out a last-minute deal. Gordon ended up taking the match. He lost by takedowns. He didn't get, guard passed or any submission attempts. And I feel, with no game plan, that was pretty ballsy of him to do. But I feel like now he's just a completely different animal. And I almost feel like that one is like good for like a super fight show or like ADCC trials, but not for the big show. They need to have like, they either need Pena, somebody that's beaten Gordon twice, or Buchecha, who went the distance, which, he only essentially lost by penalty, or Hodger, or even Verdum. It's got to be somebody super.
Got to be a top tier.
Somebody who's won ADCC previously. Somebody who has maybe an absolute title.
Exactly. So all four of those guys have all won ADCC. Hodger won, Verdun won a couple times. So if it's going to be anybody, it's probably going to be one of those guys. Yeah.
One thing is like you were on the Instagram, people were talking, and obviously like, well, Gordon, you haven't done this, you haven't done that, and then you chimed in, and there was a point where you said like, hey, like the 2019 season that Gordon did was probably one of the best no-gi performances we've seen.
Yeah.
Right. Can you kind of elaborate like what you meant by that, especially on that comment?
Sure. I mean, a lot of people want to comment, with Gordon, like, there's jock riders on every team, right? So like, I'm like an Atos, Mendes brothers team. So of course I'm going to hold those guys near and dear to my heart. But I can't deny the fact that what that kid did, it was like 2018 to 2019, double gold at Nogi Pans IBJJF, double gold at Nogi Worlds IBJJF, EBI, and double gold at ADCC, all within 12 months. I don't think that anyone else in the history of grappling has done that. And of course, people are going to be like, yeah, but he didn't win IBJJF Worlds in the gi. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying he did. What I'm saying is nobody in no gi has done that. None of the other guys that have won double gold have gone and won no gi Worlds the same year, not no-gi pans within a year, and all those things. And it's a weird thing, because it's like, Gordon has said, like, I don't want to do the gi, I don't like it, and there's, I'm going to be the best no-gi submission grappler there is. He made that declaration and he achieved it, and but the haters will always come back and say, well, yeah, but you never won gi Worlds, and it's like, okay, like you got one. Like, I mean, you gotta. I agree. Yeah, he didn't win no gi World. I would love to see him in a gi match or a gi tournament one day, but like, that's not his thing. He's not saying he's the greatest at that. He's literally saying, I suck at the. No, he doesn't say I suck at the gi. He's like, I just hate the gi. He's like, it's not my strong point.
His focus is no-gi submission grappling. If his goal is to be the best no-gi submission grappler in the world, he's primarily going to focus on no-gi submission grappling and no-gi submission grappling tournaments. Exactly. And you basically mentioned ADCC, EBI, IBJJF, C3PO, R2D2, WNO, you name it, he's won it.
Yeah, and with, like I said, it's important to know, all within 1 year time. That was what really, because it's like one thing to win like no-gi Worlds in 2012, and then 5 years later no-gi Pans, and then eventually you get like one ADCC or something, right? Which is amazing. Don't kid yourself. But to do all of that in 1 year, and I'll be honest, like I was at ADCC. He didn't show up for the pre-event stuff because he was super sick, and like he almost went to the hospital. His hand was swollen like this. Like it's funny because it's like him and Kyotera, it feels like every time they're like about to die, and then they go and have these like amazing competitions. You know what I mean? Like something always terrible happens to their health, but then they go and win in amazing fashion. It's just it's so crazy. But man, no one can dispute it. And there's a big argument going on, like, oh, why doesn't he do IBJJF, and why doesn't he do points, and why doesn't he do this? And he pretty much said it to me. He's like, look, I went out and did that. I said I was going to go do it. I did it. I said I was going to go do no-gi Pans. I did it. I said I was going to go do no-gi Worlds. I did it. I said I was going to do ADCC, and I did it. I won all of them. So now I get to call the shots. You know what I mean? So how can you argue? I mean, if you don't want to argue with that, if you feel like he has no clout or leverage to argue with it, then don't say anything. It's simply as that. Just ignore. But the guys on the other side, they can't, because it burns their ass a bit. You know what I mean? They hate it.
It's burning a hole in their soul.
So they have to say something, So they have to come back with, yeah, but you never won gi Worlds. It's like, yeah, okay, I get it, but he never said he was the best at that. So, I mean, again, it's challenging, right? Like, it's like, how do you really say who's the GOAT or like the greatest of all time? I have to acknowledge the fact that somebody like Hodger winning, ADCC and IBJJF Worlds definitely puts him in another cachet. but he never did Nogi Worlds at the time. Like, I don't know, like maybe it's one of those weird things. Like, he did this, but he didn't do that. But Gordon did this and he didn't do that. So it's like, what do you say? You know what I mean? But it is what it is, man. Like, there's always going to be haters for all the best. You know, even Michael Jordan had haters. So what are you going to do?
What are you going to do? So like on touching with Gordon Ryan, then
Yep.
So he's won pretty much everything that there is to win. Where does he go from here?
I mean, I think right now he's pretty focused on doing super fights. You're probably going to see him at a lot of Who's Number Ones, because he personally likes that rule set. He likes the 30-minute or no time limit rule set, and that's pretty much what he said he's going to do from now on, or ADCC rules, because he feels like those are the two kind of like truest forms of competition for submission grappling. I can't disagree with him on that. And I think he's just going to keep doing some Who's Number Ones until ADCC. And then I don't know. I mean, he said he would do MMA at some point, but I think he kind of reevaluated that situation after looking at how some of these MMA fighters, like, you know, they don't really have too much going on for them. Like, some of them were like, whether they have, you know, brain injury, or they're just don't have a dime or a pot to piss in or window to throw it out of, you know, like they just, it's not the illustrious career that we all think it is. You know, you have to have a backup plan. And it feels like what he's doing is building up this huge second stream of revenue and making the fight purse not as big, but, you know, one kind of feeds the other, you know? So I think once he either decides to go to MMA, he'll probably be well off, you know, probably having a school. And I know he's talking, you know, about opening up something in Puerto Rico. So, yeah, I mean, I think you're just going to continue to see him do a lot more of these super fights, these Nogi super fights. I've spoken to him about a bunch of different possibilities. He wants all the best guys, you know, but not the problem is this is like, he wants to fight all the best guys. He's never turned down a match with like anyone other than Kynan. And, you know, he wants to do it at 30 minutes or no time limit or ADCC rules. Not everyone wants that. Not everyone wants to do that. Some guys are like, oh yeah, I'll do it, but IBJJF. And it's like, oh, he doesn't want to do that, you know? So it becomes this issue, like who wants to fight him at his own rule set and beat him? Not many people have stepped up to the plate. You know, Wagner is the last guy to do it. So we'll see that happen in a couple weeks. You know, and Wagner's, you know, super cool, tough dude, very, very tough. And I mean, he's got nothing to lose here. He's supposed to lose this match, but even if he lasts 30 minutes, you know, it's incredible. So yeah, he's in a tough situation because he can't take, I mean, he's open to taking fights, but not too many people are stepping up. But I think you're just going to continue seeing him, you know, kind of reigning in the super fight kingdom there, you know, continuing to tap guys out in that format for a while.
Why do you think that is, that guys just won't, like the idea that dethrone the king is you fight him in his rule set and you kick him out, and guys are just not willing to take that match, and they're just, no, I want to do it on my rules. So they're always trying to change it, and so it favors them. Is it just,
well, I think,
or is it,
I don't think it's, I think it's like this, like, okay, like, I think it's like what do they say? The pink elephant in the room, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to say this, but the idea of jiu-jitsu and grappling as being like going out there and submitting somebody each and every time, we've all come to realize and respect the fact that there are people that go out there and can win matches without submitting people and do it in dominant fashion, perfect fashion. And does that depreciate their value if they don't submit every single person? No. So there's a lot of guys out there that are incredible athletes, competitors, players, but they're not necessarily amazing submission hunters or submission grapplers or finishers. It's like boxing, you know, like if you look at boxing, Floyd Mayweather is a beautiful counter boxer. I don't know how many knockouts he has, but like I imagine it's high.
Not a lot.
No, okay.
Not a lot.
So, but I imagine like, but that's my point. Like, does he need to knock out everyone? There's a beauty in what he does by scoring, right? So I feel like that's the same thing with jiu-jitsu. So what's happened is we've strayed away from the whole submission as the primary objective, and created these athletes and these competitors who are good at passing, takedowns, sweeps, taking the back. And I've had conversations with a couple of them last week, and I won't say their names, but they told me, they're like, yeah, like, there's more to jiu-jitsu than just submission. I'm like, no, there isn't, but in their world, but that's the thing. Like, in their world, you can't also knock them because they're a world champion.
They're winning,
what I mean?
right?
So, and they're winning, at the highest level. So you can't depreciate their value. So what's happened is we've in essence, we haven't done it, but the sport has created these two different types of athletes. And one is the submission hunter, who, wants to be the guy like Gordon, to just, submit everyone and only do sub only and not really caring. And that's amazing. That's awesome. And then there's the other guy, the sportive competitor. And what's better, like, I don't think, I think at the end of the day, it should be always be able to submission. But I mean, you look at a guy like Leandro Lo, his technique is amazing, like, there's so many guys I can name that maybe they didn't finish everyone, but their technique and their passing and their sweeps and everything, it's just incredible. So it's not that they suck, but it's just that's not their thing anymore. And the sport has evolved and expanded so much that, we've added all these different rules and ways to score. So it became harder and harder for everyone to just submit everyone all the time. So, it's a weird discussion to have, So I think it might, to answer your question, sorry, I went on this rant, but I think at the end of the day, like, there's certain guys out there that become specialists in strategy and takedowns and sweeps, and they know that they cannot go there and throw all that out the window, because that's all they've been training. And they know that if they fought Gordon with those elements in play, they would win, because they have much more experience in the tactical, in the in the strategic play, and not so much as the technical submission oriented play. So I think that's why some of these guys are like, well, I'm not a submission hunter. I acknowledge that. They don't want to say that publicly, but by them saying, let's do IBJJF, that's kind of what they're saying. Because, and again, it's not to discredit them. They've built their whole career. They're doing seminars, they're selling DVDs with it, they're making their money. So who cares, but unfortunately, that's why we have this sort of challenge with getting Gordon, fights, or maybe, the best guys coming out to fight Gordon that we all want to see, the guys like Leandro and, all these other guys that we want to see him fight. So that's the problem, I think.
I think it comes down to, like, basically you kind of you said the pink elephant. It's the rule set. I think it's because you have somebody like Leandro Lo, for example, who doesn't have a lot of ADCC experience. For example, he only competed in 2017, but he's done so many IBJJF events, like, Pan Am's, Worlds, millions of tournaments in Brazil, and like he's probably in that category of, like, tactical, smart, using the rules to his advantage.
Yeah.
Does that make him a lesser fighter than somebody else or competitor? No, it doesn't, not necessarily. No. But I guess the question is, how do you blend the two? Like, how do you get like a bridge across from one side to the other to kind of, keep the sport, I guess, progressing? Or is it just moving in the direction of just, okay, forget about all the other stuff. We're hunting for the submission, go. We're hunting for the knockout, go.
Yeah, I mean, I think the ultimate, the best answer there is ADCC, because ADCC, the first half of the match is no points. So the sub-only guys have a chance. And then after that, there's points. So the point players can win. And I think that's what makes it so special, because it's the only competition where you see both of those types of athletes that I mentioned go in and compete on the same stage. You know what I mean? Like, you won't see submission fighters necessarily at every Nogi Worlds like you do ADCC, and and vice versa. You know, you won't see sub only guys at Nogi Worlds as much. So I think they, you know, with the growth of ADCC, we're probably going to start seeing more of those kind of crossover matches between those two styles of athletes. With the growth of jiu-jitsu, I mean, like, let's be honest, like professional jiu-jitsu right now is it's crazy because like we're in the middle of a pandemic kind of still, and it's bigger than it's ever been before. You know what I mean? Like it really is. Like if you think of all how many events there are, what these guys are getting paid now, the DVD sales, the set, like all that stuff, and all this during a pandemic. Are you kidding me? Wait till like you know the gates start opening back up, and you know we start doing you know large scale events with audiences again. Like you know we're on a we're gonna have a big rebound, you know, with professional submission grappling. So yeah, sports just keeps growing. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and I'm just happy to be, you know, kind of involved in it as much as I can.
So let me ask you this, especially when we look at like growing and bigger is better and the whole deal. So when we talked about the AJA versus the Brazil, right? Like if that were something to ever happen.
Oh, like American Jiu-Jitsu?
Yeah, the American Jiu-Jitsu
versus guns,
yeah,
freedom,
the American Jiu-Jitsu versus
bald eagles,
Brazil, right? Now, like, kind of like your honest assessment, because obviously, like, there's the wish list of what you want, and then what you actually get are two different things. But like, what do you actually think it would take, whether it's being money, athletes, to make something like that happen?
So there's a number of different reasons why I think it's going to be challenging for this to happen. The rule set, number one, because a lot of the guys that are right now, you know, asking for this event won't do the same rules that the guys that they want to fight will do. So they want, you know,
we're right back to square one.
Exactly. So it's man, I'm telling you, it's the rule set number one, it's the location number two, because not all Brazilians can get into the United States, and not all Americans can get into Brazil. So that's why these guys proposed that there was an event in Mexico. But it's like, who's going to pay for that? Are you just going to go on the beach and show up and get a video camera? Like that's like it's like that's the thing. Like sometimes
it's gotta be realistic.
Yeah, well, it's like okay, yeah, you could do that. You could find like a pro wrestling gym and do it. But is that what it deserves? No, man. This thing deserves a real. Like when I see this, I see like you know an American team, and I see a Brazilian team, and I see them coming out with like tracksuits, and I see a flag, and I see the national anthem, and I see them, you know, like that's how I envision it. But it's not the right time, and I've been talking to a couple different promoters about it, about how to do it, and there are some wheels in motion, but it's going to take a little time. You know, it's not going to be the way that everyone thinks. I think the thing is that this concept and this idea it kind of stemmed from this American Jiu-Jitsu documentary that, you know, we at Flow put out, right? And I think this is the reality of the situation, and you guys can tell me if I'm wrong. I'd say 95% of the people that are like hating the documentary didn't see it. They saw a trailer, they saw the name of it, and they saw the social media, but they didn't watch it. Did you guys watch it by chance?
I watched it when it was on YouTube. I watched it. Yeah.
So if you see the ending of the documentary, the same guy that was basically saying like, "F yeah, I'm American Jiu-Jitsu," at the ending of the whole thing, he's like, "We're all just Jiu-Jitsu, man." He's like, "If you want to call it Brazilian, call it Brazilian. If you want to call it American," he's like, "Call it American." Like he doesn't like. That's the thing. So I think what happened was that video, and the guy that made it, he's a sweet guy, like super nice guy, Reed. And the idea is he wanted to create a conversation piece because, you know, we got the guys at Daisy Fresh, they're saying they're American Jiu-Jitsu, and he's like, "What's that?" Then Keenan comes out with this American Jiu-Jitsu, and he's like, you know. So then we started to ask people, and that's what the thing was about. It was supposed to be a conversation piece. It wasn't a declaration. So what happened was you get all these Brazilians, you know, some of which I'm not like, you know, I love Brazil. My wife's Brazilian. I have all my friends, a lot of Brazilian friends, but like some of these guys can't speak English, so they just see American Jiu-Jitsu, the word, and they're like, fucking Americans, you know, they're saying Americans. They're literally like,
you're taking our jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. They're like, oh, they're saying that American jiu-jitsu is better, and it's like no one's saying that. You know what I mean? Like, and in reality, like the whole documentary is like let's be honest. Like when I think of American jiu-jitsu, when I think of what American jiu-jitsu represents to me, I don't think of any of the guys in the documentary. The guys that I think of are Matt Hughes, Jeff Monson, the no-gi wrestlers that learn leg locks, even Eddie Bravo, yeah. But I don't think of like Keenan's lapel. That's not American jiu-jitsu. That's bullshit. That's just a Keenan. That's a Keenan marketing tool that he used the documentary for, right? And Mikey, like that's not American jiu-jitsu. So it's like anything that Keenan says is just marketing for his gym, right? But when I think of American jiu-jitsu, it's you know the guys like Mark Lehman. It's those original guys that took the gi off, Chris Brennan, that were like, I don't need the traditional Brazilian uniform, Eddie Bravo, and I'm gonna go wrestle and then do the grappling. That to me, that's American jiu-jitsu, you know. So anyway, so I think what happened was some of these guys on the internet, they got really excited, they got really hot, they got really emotional from this American Jiu-Jitsu documentary. Then you know that started to build. And you know on social media, they started saying, "What?" Like they don't even know what it's about. They're like American Jiu-Jitsu. You know, then people started saying, "Yeah, they probably said this," and then it's like you know the telephone game, right? Everyone just assumes things, and then all of a sudden, you know, the Galvao incident happens, and then all of a sudden, like some of the Brazilians are saying, well, that was a slap to Brazil. Like they're taking it like personally. So they were like, oh, he represents America. He represents some AJJ. And when all that happened, because like the guys who made this like this declaration this week, Isaac Baez and Gaudio, they literally said that. They're like, oh, you know, like Gordon slapped Galvao, and that's you know, like they reference that. So it's like they're lumping together the American Jiu-Jitsu documentary, the trash talking that American athletes do, because the thing is, in Brazil they don't have trash talk. Do you understand? So like,
no, it's a different cultural thing. Like
yeah,
if you're saying stuff about someone's mom, expect to throw down.
Yeah.
Versus exactly. Like, you know, I bust on Aaron all the time for. I mean, it's Aaron. Come on.
Yeah. If you say like. If you trash talk in Brazil, like that's a declaration of war. So when they see all these Americans, they're cocky and they're you know saying all these rude things, and then all of a sudden they're saying, "Oh, we're better than Brazilians," and then all of a sudden they see you know Gordon like you know loud and in your face and flipping the bird, and then all of a sudden there's a slap. They take that as an offense. So they're like, okay, well, now we want to go to war with America. So that's how they that was their answer. They came with this like declaration. And then when they what happened was these guys made some social media posts. And then a buddy of mine, Sinistro in California, he was like, oh, cool idea. So he made a poster. And he was like,
I saw that.
That was cool.
Yeah, it was. And I was like, oh, right on. They put who's number one. They didn't put you know, anyone else. So I was like, okay, cool. And at first I was like, man, this is an awesome idea. But then when I started to see the comments and how volatile and how emotional and how toxic it got, I was like, you know what? I don't think this is going to work out. I don't think this is a good idea. I think cooler heads just need to prevail. And one of the promoters, the guy that runs BJJ Stars in Brazil, he has an idea to do an event where it's like 5 gi matches, 5 no gi matches. But his intention will be to promote like peace between the cultures. Like it's not going to be like a declaration of war and like this is the battleground and this is our first you know encounter. It's more going to be like, okay, let's just have a fun dual meet, you know, of America versus Brazil. Because I'll be honest with you, like the chances of the matches that you saw in that poster happening are like 1 in a million. Like you're gonna have to find another Sheikh Mohammed that's gonna put out $1 million to make it happen, because it's just gonna cost too much money, not just the athletes, but to convince the athletes to all agree to do a rule set that they don't want to do. It's gonna be next to impossible. So Yeah, like I said, I think it's a cool idea, but I think the tensions are a little too hot right now for that. I think down the road, because what they used to do, like in Brazil, they used to have like a Rio Sao Paulo friendship cup. They would have like the team from Rio come to Sao Paulo and fight.
Was it actually called the Friendship Cup?
Yeah, it was cool. Yeah. And then they had this event called I don't know, it was Japan against the United States, no, Japan against Brazil. So they brought like 5 Brazilians to Japan, and they did this in the past, but they did it with like respect and honor. I mean, I don't know if Gordon going there going like this is going to be the way to go right now. I think, but I do think there is a way. I do think that there is a way to do this. It's just it needs timing, really good planning, and good financing to execute. So we'll see.
You've been a promoter in the past, and you've seen a lot of things happen recently with promotion when it comes, Gordon flipping the bird, for example, and talking copious amounts of shit on social media. What is your take on that promotional method? And then there's we talk about the respectful method. There's kind of different ways of promoting. Like, what's your take on the whole thing? Like, what's necessarily good for the sport? What should we be promoting? What's too far? What's not far enough?
Well, I mean, I think we all know what's too far is like when it starts to get really vulgar and really like, if any racist stuff comes out, I think that's probably too far. But I mean, I'm never going to be the guy that's saying like, yeah, like trash talk is great for the sport. I'm never going to be that guy. But I will say, closed mouths don't get fed. So if you are a guy that is just going to let your jiu-jitsu do the talking and you can't speak, and you can't promote, and you can't market, and you can't hype yourself, you're not going to do the numbers, and the promoter will not have the more access to funds to give you. So the more you promote, the more people come and watch the product or the event, and the more the promoter can give you. Does that make sense? Where some of these guys, like, you put a mic in their face and they're like, oh, I don't say anything. I'm just going to let my talking on the competition, whatever. And that's cool too. But I mean, that, like, as a promoter, they're paying you for you to fight, but also for you to promote. So if that's through sharing a poster, if that's through making your own videos, you got to do something. And because the more people are interested in watching you, the more views you get, and then it's reciprocal. Then then the more the promoter can call you back and give you more. You know what I mean? If you're there and you're boring and you don't say anything and no one wants to see you, the promoter's going to see that in the viewership and the buys, and then he's going to realize, okay, well, that didn't work, so maybe I just don't have you back. So I guess my actually Gordon Ryan did a really good explanation of that on my podcast that I had with him on Flow. If you guys should check it out, like, he explained it so well. I'm not going to try to paraphrase him, but yeah, I just think that, like, you got to market, you got to hype the fight. If there's a match, you got to be able to hype it. If you and hype could be trash talk, or it could just be hype. Like, I mean, there's like Gilbert Burns is a perfect example. Like, he's constantly putting social media out there, like, and he jokes around with guys, and he's like, oh man, I'm gonna kill him, but he says it with a smile, so he doesn't say anything like terrible. You know what I mean? Or you could be clever with your promotion, like a Khabib. He's pretty clever. He's at what he does, but he does do it. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't talk trash, but he does do it. Maybe he hired a marketing manager for him. I don't know, but he does it. So you got to be able to market. You got to help the promotion. You got to help the promoter out. But yeah, there is a line, obviously, you don't want to cross, where it's getting the wrong things involved. So I'm all for hyping an event. I've had to push athletes and fighters to do it before and work with them on that. And I'm not really necessarily into the trashing, but I do, let's be honest here. Like, did you want to watch Conor when he was in the first 2 fights in UFC just because he was awesome? Or did you want to watch him after he threw the dolly? We kind of all want to watch him You know,
Throw a
after
dolly.
the dolly, like, you know, we all kind of wanted to, you know, like as shameful as it is to admit, you know, that's just how it is. It's like when you drive and you see the car wreck, you know, you want to slow down and see it. So, you know, and I'm not saying everyone has to do that, because then it's stupid, you know. Like there's guys that do it, they try to be Connor and they just come off stupid. Like AJ Agazarm is like, you know, I like AJ like outside of what he does, like hanging out with him. I've hung out with him in like Argentina and whatever. Like he's a cool guy outside of that. But when it comes to like his promotion, it's almost like he does it so hard that people don't even get it, and it looks so
Yeah,
fake.
it's so fake.
Yeah,
Like
so,
he just can't
trying
pull it
too
off.
hard. He's trying too hard almost.
yeah, exactly. So like where I've had conversations with like Dylan Dennis about like what he does and how he does it, and it's all strategic, everything he does. So, you know, and he doesn't even have to say anything. He'll just like the guy like literally shared one video of mine on Instagram. All he did was said, check this out. And I was like, really? 20,000 views in one day. Like, you know what I mean? Like it was insane. Like 20,000 YouTube videos and what, literally all he said was check this out. So there's guys that know how to utilize their social media very subtly, and then there's guys that maybe they have to put a little more work in because they don't have as big a reach. But you got to be able to do it. You got to be able to do something, you know. So I'm all for hype, not necessarily the really bad trash talk, but like I said, closed mouths don't get fed.
Absolutely. I would say one example of somebody who's using social media really well right now is Craig Jones. And some of his ridiculous videos that he's put out. One where he's wearing an OnlyFans rash guard. He's going to the bathroom. He may be wiping himself with a Mateus Denise DVD cover.
Yeah, but here's the thing, like comedy. Okay, so look at that. He's doing something, right? He's not flipping the bird. He's not like, you know, fighting. He's not doing anything terrible, but he's utilizing his reach, utilizing comedy to get people to look at what he does and say, shit, this was funny, and share it with their buddy. Right? Like that's exactly what's happening. Everyone's gonna share a Craig Jones video because they're hilarious. I love them. So it's like, and now you know that whatever he does, it's probably gonna be funny. So you're gonna see whatever he says. So he knows what he's doing. And what he's doing is he's hyping another Mateus match because he's lost twice to him, and he wants, you know, he's basically hinting to us that he wants another Mateus match, which is cool. But that's another way to hype the fight. You know, he doesn't have to go there and, you know, say a derogatory thing about Mateus's mom. You know, he just did it in a funny way, and I guarantee you, Mateus is probably laughing at it because he's just like, you know, that guy, you know. But you know, that's just another way to do it. You know, comedy is a great way to market yourself and promote, for sure.
Yeah, I wanted to actually ask you about Craig Jones, because a lot of times, and especially like even at the Who's Number One, like he got overshadowed by Gordon being there, and obviously the event, the incident, what happened, but like he had a great performance against Ronaldo that kind of nobody really talked about that much because it was all about Gordon. They talked about it, but not that, like, you know what I mean, right? But this is a guy who's really kind of coming behind Gordon, and he's taking matches, he's winning them fashionably, and it's like, where do you kind of see him going, especially moving forward?
I mean, I feel like he's the next big thing, you know, out of that team, because I feel like Gary is moving on to MMA. And the idea was, when Craig was originally in the main event, and when Gordon agreed to take the Nikki match, he literally said, I will do it, but I don't want to be the main event. I don't want to take that away from Craig. So not a lot of people know that, but that's a real thing. Like he knows that he did not want to take away that, you know, main event status. He wanted all the eyes on Craig. Obviously, other shit happened that ended up, you know, and even Craig jokingly said, he's like, oh man, you know, Gordon couldn't handle me being the main event. He had to take it away. It's like,
couldn't even let me be the main event for one night.
Yeah, he could do it. But you know, I mean, he's gonna be the main event coming up real soon. That's all I could, you know, I can't really say too much. Again, and he's got a lot more, you know, cool things coming up, and I think you're going to see a lot more Craig Jones, because I feel like Craig might actually like be more willing to do whatever rule sets out there and not just ADCC. But I also think that's because he needs to like still, earn those big titles and not just the super fight wins. Gordon is like, okay, I won the world. I don't need to do that again. Craig still has a couple of those titles to kind of, win. So I feel like you're probably going to see him compete in more rule sets than Gordon will. And I think you'll see him a lot more active. But yeah, he's got all the tools, man. Like he's, from what I'm hearing, he's just a beast on the mat. And, he's great, man. He's a character. I was there when he shocked the world and beat Leandro Lo and tapped out Murillo Santana. It was incredible, and I think the sky's the limit for him. He's in a great room. He's got a good, amazing coach there, great training partners. So, yeah, he's just gonna keep going up and up.
Do you see him going and doing like IBJJF or like Pans Worlds, especially with heel hooks involved in the nogi now?
I wouldn't put it past him, honestly. Now that heel hooks are in, I wouldn't. I feel like he would probably be open to it. I'm not saying he's going to. I'm not saying that I've heard, but I just feel like he might be open to that, and maybe because he still has a couple of those titles that he wants to kind of get under his resume. We might see him do those in the future. Yeah. Yeah.
Got anything, Mike? Or
come on, man! I was waiting for you to say something, but just touching on the IBJJF and like heel hooks becoming legal now. What is your take on that now? Is step in the right direction? IBJJF's trying to kind of evolve with the times, trying to. Because I feel like for a long time it's been a large hole, especially like if you've been competing exclusively in just the IBJJF rule set or just leg locks in general, have been a little underdeveloped in that rule set versus ADCC. They've been around since day one. What are your thoughts on the IBJJF evolving that, and then even locally looking at the Canadian jiu-jitsu scene? I know how much you love the Canadian jiu-jitsu scene. I'm just playing, but what now the Canadian jiu-jitsu scene potentially adding that into their tournament structure, because they do follow the IBJJF rule set mainly.
Yeah. So I think the thing with the IBJJF is that people will say what they want, but they are the most professional major event organization out there. Not only that, they are the standard. They're the golden standard of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Mm-hmm. So in doing so, in order to be an event, that you want to expand and you want to be, get numbers, and that's their participation event, you want to make it the safest event possible. So I think that's why a lot of the safety parameters in their competitions were always in place. No reaping or this or that. For years, but I feel like, and I could be wrong, but I feel like after Lachlan, Giles submitted, 3 IBJJF world champions with a heel hook at ADCC. I think that may have been, the straw that broke the camel's back, as they say. I think that was
the camel's bracket.
The camel's bracket.
He broke the ADCC absolute bracket with
he did
multiple K-guard heel hooks.
Exactly, because the thing is like, jiu-jitsu is always supposed to be the dominant grappling art, right? Mm-hmm. And it always has been. But now you got a guy go in there and beat 3 IBJJF world champs with one technique. Why couldn't they handle that in like, you know what I mean? So there's obviously it needed to be addressed. I think that there was a demand by the athletes. I know a lot of athletes that were saying it, and I think that like they're really smart because they don't like to do anything first that's risky. They always like to see everyone else do it first and then kind of evaluate the situation. So I think they wanted to wait and like really get a sense of like how risky this could be by looking at other organizations do it. And I think it just, I think over time they just realized, hey, there's a demand for it. We need to do this, and I think it's an appropriate rule change. So I think it's awesome that they did it. That being said, I don't know what's going on with tournaments in Canada in general. all I can say is that I hope that, here in Canada, we follow suit. If we don't, that is retarded. I don't know what else to say. Like, if there's some other nonsense about like insurance or anything,
I don't think that's not. I don't even think that's real. I think it's just, listen, the IBJJF's not doing them. We're not going to follow it.
Okay.
I know there's been events in Ontario that have had heel hooks, and I don't
It
think
did?
anybody got. I don't think anybody got sued. So
Anyone die?
nobody died.
Okay.
A whole bunch of ACLs, but I don't think no casualties.
Okay, so then game on. If that's the case, then it looks like I just hope that that's what happens. That's all I'm saying. I hope that there's no, I hope that there's no resiliency from people in position to kind of veto that change. But yeah, if that happens, that's amazing. I'm all for it. And,
I think like
sorry to interrupt you.
Sorry.
That'll be great, and then that'll be good for us because now at least we have a chance as Canadian. Not we. I don't compete anymore, but like now Canada, the grapplers here have a chance to kind of catch up to the Americans, or like when they go to trials and stuff like that, they actually can have some experience competing in their own country under a similar rule set using similar submissions. Whereas like, Canadians, if you only fought exclusively on Ontario and you went to the ADCC trials and you're fighting Nicky Ryan first round and he's ripping your heel, you're in trouble. You know what I mean? If you don't have that experience, you can drill that shit all you want with your buddies after a class, but unless you're rolling and competing in that, you're not going to have that experience. So you're going to get hurt. So now I think it levels the playing field a little bit for the Canadian scene, which is awesome. That's exactly where we want to be.
I agree. There's a lot of talent that is in the local Canadian scene that we've talked to and I mentioned on this podcast a bunch of time. That's like on the cusp of breaking out or getting noticed by FloGrappling. So my question to you is, because a lot of them have asked like, hey, how do I get exposure on like that next stage, or how do I get to that next level? You're working for the people that they want to get exposed to. So the big question is, how do they do that?
It's funny because like I've had some talks with some of the most influential coaches in the scene, and some of them love stuff that we do and some of them complain. And the complaints will always be like, well, you're not covering my team enough. And when I tell the other coaches will say, well, if they're winning, they'll get coverage. So I think the number one thing at Flow is that they cover the sport. And if you're winning, the major events that they cover, you're going to get coverage. You know what I mean? It's not a favorites thing. Let's be honest. Like if you're winning black belt worlds, if you're winning, Europeans, Pans, Nogi worlds, all the big events that they're at, you're going to get seen. If you're gold medal, it's just a matter of time. If like I've had a conversation with a guy where it's like, yeah, but like my student, went to a draw with the guy that beat Johnny Grippo, but Flo doesn't talk about him. And I'm like,
you didn't beat him.
Like,
he didn't beat him.
No,
like,
but
that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I'm like,
he didn't beat Johnny Grippo.
Yeah, like, and it's not even about Johnny Grippo. It's just like, do you know how many guys have the same story? You know what I mean? Like a lot, So, I hope this doesn't sound rude at all, but it's just the nature of the beast. Like if you're out there and you're winning, you're gonna, and they see it and they see you constantly there. You gotta. It's like that old expression, work so much that you don't have to introduce yourself anymore, and it's not that unless I'm mistaken, are there any current Canadian black belt world champions that are not getting an exposure? Am I wrong? Am I off here? I don't think there's any, right?
No current Canadian black belt world champions. No.
Okay. So, I know that some of the brown belts have been, guys like Dante, have been profiled, and I also think like it depends on what you're winning, like look at Taza and Ethan. They're out there fighting in all these pro events. They're Canadian. They're absolutely getting recognition on FloGrappling because they're choosing to do those events and they're winning those events. So they can go win the Boston Open, and they, there's nothing wrong with that. Or the Montreal Open, there's nothing wrong with that. Or they could try to get into Fight to Win and try to get into Polaris and try to get into, all these other events. And that's where the coverage is. Like, I mean, you can try to, like it's right there for you. I mean, it's not rocket science. So I mean, it's hard, obviously, but if you are producing the results, they see you. It's just like sponsors. Like I've talked to Shoyoro before, and I'll say, hey, like, what about this guy and that guy? And they'll just look at me and be like, what place did he get in Worlds? If it's, well, he got third and he lost to this guy, they're like, well, they want, their whole motto is like, be first, so they want those first place finishers. And that's not an exclusive thing for Shoyoro. I'm not saying that they're only going to get the first place finisher, because certainly they have guys that lose, but to really get their attention, you got to be somebody that is, that first place finisher. Then they cannot ignore you, so I think that's the key, and also just market yourself, in a good way. There's guys that market themselves in weird ways, guys like going out there with like freaking unicorn blow up dolls, like, like it's just weird. There's guys that do weird stuff out there, and that's cool, like that's their thing, but then they're going to be looked at as that's their thing, and not for their accomplishments. So I think if guys, there's guys on the Canadian scene that are really producing some good content. They're producing results. They're grinding. I think those are the guys that are going to get the attention. And then when you get those first place finishes, then it all comes together. When they keep seeing you. I look at like I forget which Sims it was. I
think it was Steve Sims. He did Pans recently.
Yeah. So like Steve, a lot of guys know him in the area here. Super tough guy, super tough, right? And he hadn't competed for a little while, but he started to compete, and he did ADCC trials. He had a pretty tough loss there, but he did good. Then he was doing a little more, and then people started seeing him at Atos. Word got around, and the more people saw him at Flow, the more people were like starting to remember his name. Oh, that's that Steve Sims. That's that Sims guy. You know what I mean? So now they know who he is. They've seen him compete. He's doing it. Maybe he didn't get the first and the big ones, but when he does, boom, story's that much easier. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
100%. Because like I'll like even say like one of the episodes on Flow like that I'm fascinated with is great is the Daily Fresh series, right? Like, and you look at like that series alone, where it's like, yeah, there's just a bunch of guys that are training in a gym, but they're training so hard. They're living in these conditions, and they're winning, and that's how they're getting that team is winning, and that's why they're getting that recognition, and that the series about them basically is because they created that culture.
They created guys that win, but they also have a very unique story. That's the
100% too.
Yeah, like there's characters there, like they're not just like, you go to that gym and what you see there is very special. It's not your everyday gym. And I know, there's always other ends of the spectrum here. Like I know some Brazilians are like, oh man, but in Brazil it's even poorer. And it's like, come on, man. Like now you're comparing whose gym is poorer. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I mean, like, man, I've seen Daily Fresh. Yeah. I think there was like a possum in the ceiling at one point, or a raccoon.
Yeah, those guys like I heard about them like 5 years ago because Shoyoro started to sponsor him, and he kept telling me, he's like, oh man, you guys got to check out this Daisy Fresh, and you got to check out the Pedigo. And I was like, who are these guys? And he's like, man, you have no idea. He's like, what would he say? Like literally, like in the winters, their gis would be like frozen, and they would like still, like literally frozen, because they would have to hang them out to get fresh air.
Yeah, it gets
And they were literally frozen, and they would still train in them, like frozen.
No,
crazy. So,
I can't put on a cold gi. Yeah, I'm out.
So that got his attention, and then he started sponsoring them, and then they started producing results. That got him more sponsorships. We had some discussions with them. We had some discussions with Shoyoro, and they were like, hey guys, you should check these guys out. It turns out one of the guys on our content team was friends with them, and knew their story. It was like, you know, yeah, totally, I could set it up, and that's kind of how it happened, you know. But yeah, it's they have results, but they have a story. If you're just another competitor and you're the guy that's almost winning, there's not much to say, you know. Like you gotta sell yourself a little bit. You gotta make yourself into a commodity. You gotta have a brand. You gotta have some sort of uniqueness to yourself, for sure.
Absolutely. I think you nailed it. I think
look at Greg King. Look at Greg King, you know, with his accent, with his mysterious background,
his purple hat,
with his purple hat, with his mysterious background, with his selfies, with his cigars. Man, like in his own way, he's built himself into a little character. You know what I mean? So,
well, if we're ever hiring a traffic reporter for the 401, he'll be the first one that we'll be hiring. First name that comes to mind. But to touch on it in all seriousness, like with Daisy Fresh, like another example, like from Brazil, is like Cicero Costa's gym. There was a bunch of killers there for years that nobody knew about because they only competed in Brazil, and like they had a gym that was like in the favelas, and they would just throw down mats in a church, and they would just pull hada and go hard. And over time, you know, some people started slowly over time coming out of that gym, like Leandro Lowe, the Meow brothers, and they started producing results. And then that got attention to, you know, their story as well. And I think that's like another perfect example for those that are listening out this, trying to get some exposure. Basically, I think it comes down to, you gotta win some big titles. You gotta win when the camera's on, and you gotta have what separates you from other people that are winning. Exactly.
Like, you know, Leandro's highlights, Leandro winning Copa Podio numerous times, brought a lot of attention to that gym. The Meow brothers, oh shit, there's these two Japanese Brazilian twins, and one of them is missing a tooth, and they just train all day. That brought attention, you know what I mean? So we were actually, before COVID, we were really considering going to Brazil, to Manaus. It's where my wife is from, and Manaus has produced so many tough guys that no one knows about. And you know, and we were going to go there and like profile some of the top gyms there, because we just keep hearing about it. Like guys are like going there, picking, like even like some of the top gyms in California, they'll go to Manaus and like pick all of the top kids and like bring them to the States and like bring them on their team and all this stuff, just because they have so much potential there, because there's literally nothing else to do there. It's just like train in the equator weather, go to the jungle on the weekend, and then go train. You know what I mean? Because there's nothing to do.
There's no beach. It's just train.
No, there's no beach.
You know, the beach. You're in the rainforest.
No, because it's like Rio de Janeiro. It's like, especially if you're a foreigner, you go there and you're like, oh, you know, you like training is cool and all that, but like go to the beach, or you can go to jiu-jitsu this morning. You know, you're eventually going to hit the beach at some point during the day, and then all of a sudden you have a beer and then this, and then your day is gone, you know, so it's a little harder. Whereas in Manaus, Sao Paulo, they don't have beaches. It's a little more hardcore, you know, and Manaus has this whole like, you know, native culture there, and you know, the Indian culture there, so they take a lot of pride in that whole like really tough training environments and stuff. So yeah, that was a place we were going to hit up, but hopefully when COVID's done, we could still go. I just bought a new video camera, so I want to go do some filming myself for sure.
Question for you before we start to kind of wrap up, but who's number one is up on March 26th.
Yeah,
big card. There's a bunch of really good matches happening. Which one are you most excited for, and which one do you kind of think is going to be like the most excited?
Man, they're all pretty awesome. To be honest with you, like the whole card, you know, top to bottom, it's really good. You know, I want to see Mikey make his no-gi come back. You know, that'll be cool. You know, getting to see Gordon against Wagner, Yuri and Nicky Rod. I feel like somebody's gonna get flattened. You know,
someone's falling off the stage at some point.
Yeah, no, there's no stage at who's number one. It's a flat mat, so I feel like sometimes that's even more dangerous, because then they continue to run out, right? And man, like Yuri is so aggressive, especially nogi. Nicky Rod's a beast. Man, but I think Wagner and Gordon, I really want to see. I really want to see what happens there. I think that's going to be a cool one. I think it's going to be, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Excuse me. And anytime you see Gordon compete, it's always something technically cool, and being able to see how Wagner's going to handle that or what he's going to try to do to Gordon should be very interesting for me. But which match are you guys looking forward to?
I think there's one match on there. I think it's going to be a sleeper. It's Johnny Tama versus Oliver Taza. I think if there's an emoji, it's going to be rocket, moonship, fire emoji. Yep. I think both those guys are really extremely exciting styles of jiu-jitsu, and if they both come to fight, it's gonna be a scrap.
And it's like we said earlier, two Canadians, even Cade Rotolo and Ethan, they're gonna have the rematch from who's number one. So that was under a different. We had when we first started doing who's number one, we were using fight to win rules, but now we kind of made our own rule sets. It's a little different. So I feel like this should be a different match. And I know that both of them were not really happy with the outcome. They even Cade was like, let's run that one back. I think I need to do better. And Ethan was like, of course. So there you go. You got two Canadians, fighting on the main stage, and they're only there because they put the time in and did everything. But those two matches are going to be awesome. And like you said, man, I'm a huge Johnny Tama fan. I actually spotted Tama and Sinistro and his crew when they were blue belts, and I introduced them to Shoyu Roll. I was like, man, you got to watch these kids. They're amazing. Because they were just doing shit that I'd never seen, just submitting everyone, And so I've been following those guys for a while. I know, their instructor, Soluso from Ecuador, and they got a big team out there. And yeah, those two matches. But it's different though, because I feel like those matches, it's going to be a lot of the leg entanglement, the kiss of the, I just see, I already see it, leg entanglement, kiss of the dragon, and then hopefully something, something happens, Whereas
you went full Italian there for a second.
And then some, hopefully, somebody catches something. That's I don't want to see 15 minutes of a lot of nothing. You know what I mean? Because sometimes what happens is, the flip side of the sub only rule set is when you get the lighter guys, it's just constantly movement. So when it's just two guys, two salamanders just keep going like this, it's you don't even know who won, and then I hopefully somebody does something where they actually secure a position or a really good submission, so it's not too close where no one knows who actually deserves to win at that point. So it's gonna be great, man. The whole card is sick, and we're actually working on another card right now. So possibly, I can't tell you actually. So just stay tuned. You'll
oh,
we're getting exclusive news.
Oh, sorry, guys. No, but
breaking news.
We'll probably announce it at the next Who's Number One when the next Who's Number One is. That's all I can say. All right, and it'll be good. Trust me. We got some good matches in the works.
Are you going to go down and commentate, or are you going to stay here in Canada?
So they want me to go down. They've asked me to go down and commentate, but I don't know what's going on with the Canadian border right now. If I come back and I get a false positive, then I'm stuck in a hotel. I got 3 kids. I can't do that. You know what I mean? If the border wasn't with that scenario, I'd probably go. But with it being like this, I heard you get stuck in a hotel, and then you got to pay $2,000 for the hotel, and you're there.
Yeah, it's something stupid, and that's until at least April 27th, I think.
Yeah. So after that, I think after that, if they stop with that nonsense, I'll probably start making some trips down to Who's Number One to commentate and give everyone the golden voice that they deserve.
the golden, sexy, erotic voice that the jiu-jitsu community
boys
deserves.
Are doing a good job.
No, they're amazing. I stay in touch with them all the time. They're my colleagues. Shanji was commentating too as well, and Howell Teague is super knowledgeable. Chase Smith started jumping in there, and they're like a yin and yang, so they're doing awesome too. But you know, I can't wait to be back there. I can't wait to, you know, I haven't commentated in actually the last event that I commentated was the first Who's Number One. Then that was all gi matches, and that was last January, I believe, or last December in California. And so it's been a while, you know what I mean? I'm starting to get a little stir crazy, and I'm like, I feel like I just got to start playing matches and do some commentating just myself, just so I don't get rusty when I have to go back. But yeah, it'll be nice to go back, especially to Austin, Texas, man. It's so cool there. The food is just amazing, and it's just a really cool place. So I definitely want to go back.
Definitely. We need the Morgan Freeman of the jiu-jitsu community back, narrating everyone's life.
That's it. Yeah, trying to make my name as the voice of jiu-jitsu, but yeah, we'll see what happens.
No, that's amazing. But hey, Riccardo, I want to thank you so much for jumping on with us today, dropping some knowledge, especially giving us the inside scoop with a lot of different things that are happening. We definitely want to have you back on the show again. We love having you on. Right. Is there anything you want to close us out with?
No, thank you guys once again. I think you guys are doing a really cool thing. I know I said this last time. I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. Like, I think like you guys, I think it's important for like all our Canadian jiu-jitsu grappling culture to have people do what you guys are doing, and I feel like, and I could be off, but I feel like just everyone in Canada is just like doing their own thing. And I feel like you guys are doing a good job of like, connecting and reaching out to different people and different demographics in the Canadian scene, and keeping everything relevant and just like getting them to tell their stories. Saw you guys had Matt Roca, that was really cool. Joel, like guys like that. Like, there's a lot of legends in the Canadian scene. Guys that were fighters, guys that are coaches, guys that did stuff that no one else has done. So thank you guys for doing what you're doing. And then if you guys are watching or listening, please feel free to check me out on my social media, my YouTube, subscribe to my channel. I got a lot of cool stuff on the way. Obviously I have the show on FloGrappling once a week, the Blaze Breakdown Show. So please, if you're not a subscriber, I highly recommend subscribing. I'm not trying to sell you, but like, it's totally worth it. You know what I mean? Because like the amount of stuff that we have on the channel now, I mean, it's insane, you know what I mean? And like now we just signed a couple of new promotions, EUG promotions and Emerald City Invitational. There's Fight to Win every week. So it's like, people like, they love to complain about like they're like, oh, it should be free. And it's like, okay, well, if it's free, it's going to look like shit. The athletes aren't going to get paid. And you know what I mean? Like, what do you prefer? Like, you know what I mean? It's like,
I want free food, free car, free gas.
Yeah.
Promo like, code free 99.
Exactly. So like, free is not always free. Free sometimes is the most expensive. So I think, the value proposition that Flow has is great, even though some people, may not like everything. And, I'm not going to say that that they never make a mistake, because everyone does. But I think they do a great job, and I'm happy to be part of the team. And, if you guys support them, you support me, and I really appreciate that. So yeah. And guys, if you're watching, keep supporting these two dudes. Check them out on social media. Keep liking, share their stuff. Come on, guys. Let's build
subscribing.
We got to get there. We need this channel to have more subscribers than Greg King's by the end of the year. That's the goal.
that is the goal.
We're going to shut Greg King down with his purple hat.
Squash it. In all seriousness, subscribe to Riccardo's channel. He has a lot of cool throwback BJJ matches on there from the Gracie Chizuka tennis club days. Yeah. So check those out. There's a lot of really cool old school jiu-jitsu on there. If that's your thing, that's the spot to look for it.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. We'll see you soon.